Hello, hi, and good morning. Welcome to another episode of Point to Point. It is the show where I drive from one point to another and try to get to the point. Today's point, today's episode, today's purpose. It's the money episode. The cost of Grand Theft Auto 6 has recently been revealed this morning. If you have accessed the internet, you have seen it. It seems like the entire internet has decided, the entire gaming internet at least, has decided that every single time there's a piece of Grand Theft Auto information, it is imperative that you hop on that ad revenue to try to get some clicks to your website for a cover reveal, a pre-order date announcement, or the price reveal. I'm sure that there is a different episode of Point to Point hiding somewhere into just why we really can't stop talking about this game and how it becomes its kind of like its own kind of weird recursive press cycle. Because everyone thinks it's going to be the biggest game in the world, we therefore make it the biggest game of the world by covering every little bitty piece of it. I don't know. I find it annoying, but I'm sure the people who want to see 15 articles about the cover reveal being kind of exactly the same type of art that we've seen the entire time, maybe those people are out there and they're excited to read 9 different articles that all kind of say the same thing that says there's a new cover. But that's not why we're here today. Musings about Grand Theft Auto, the cultural event, will be in a different episode. Coffee. All right. So the money episode today is about the price has been revealed for Grand Theft Auto. I actually didn't really want to talk about this too much because the actual money episode is about the Steam Deck. But because the Grand Theft Auto stuff came out and it is at the Mario Kart zone of 80 American dollars for a code in a box, which I guess makes sense. They're not going to fit it on one disc, I guess. And also being the single-player campaign only, allegedly. Kind of what I want to talk about is the just like the rising costs of participating in gaming. The thing with this, and it's kind of something that we've brought up in multiple episodes at this point, is that every dollar that video gaming as a hobby goes up, like as the console prices go up, as the Nintendo Switch price goes up again, as the Steam Deck is released for 1,050 American dollars, all of this stuff starts to become like more than rent for some people. And I think that the moment that a hobby becomes comparable to 1/12 of your living expenses for a year, I think it starts to, we're getting to the point where video games are reaching the weird amount of 1950s logic of how much you should pay for an engagement ring. And I think that we're kind of losing the plot a little bit. And it means that games become, as these prices increase, as there are more expensive games coming out, as Grand Theft Auto hits $80, there becomes this kind of haves and haves not thing with interacting with a cultural media that people really enjoy, and it starts to kind of price people out of this hobby that is it is play. These are games. We're not talking about access to the Harvard Club or the salon culture of the 1890s. We're talking about playing games, and by pricing people out of them, like by trying to take whatever you possibly can out of it, it kind of gets to this point where the economics of participating in games from a consumer point of view gets trickier and trickier. As I kind of look into my future of, where I want to be, what I want to do, the price of games continue to, cause problems. It starts to make me think about, the type of stuff I want to make, like the type of gaming content I want to do, but also how I want to spend my evenings. I know that there's been a growing movement for a while now of, no buying, backlog only year and stuff like that. And we're kind of getting to the point where I could very happily sustain that, I think. And it's going to turn into a thing where it might just end up being relevant. And stuff like the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is its own special case here, I think, because it is big computer, right? It's big Linux computer. It's small. It's actually small Linux computer, but my general thoughts on the Steam Deck is that I think it's an opportunity missed. I'm sure that there is some actual business logic and data going on behind the scenes that, the Steam Deck probably sold pretty well. It didn't sell. It sold really well. I think perhaps the new Steam user acquisition or the increase in Steam purchases for the deck, maybe just those lines didn't go up the way that Valve wanted them to. Because you look at the big price increase from the $350 I paid for my Steam Deck to the now over $600, $700 for the Steam Deck now, and you can kind of see that okay, maybe they were not subsidizing it as much as they maybe could have, or component prices just did go up that much. Again, the hilarious thing about component prices going up and the Xbox 2 weeks ago saying, hey, dang, we're going to have to lay some folks off because no one's buying these consoles because they're too expensive. And we're all kind of looking for the guy who did that. Is funny, except for the layoffs part. And so I think the thing with the Steam Deck that is maybe most bothersome, and not having a look into Valve financials and knowing how that stuff works, to me the Steam Deck kind of felt like the underdog opportunity here, and not from they're not a Valve isn't a huge console manufacturer like a games company in the way that the others are, but I think when I looked at the Steam Deck and when I looked at the Steam machine, they looked like new competitors in the space. They have Valve has a very specific and slightly different business model than a Microsoft or a PlayStation, in that they run the store. They run the store. They can, they have their 30% variable rate that they kind of take off of all of Steam purchases. I think of it, I'm sure people will bristle at this, but Valve is very much the Apple of video games in that kind of way. Their business is buoyed by the storefront. The hardware stuff that they make has always been dalliances and fun times. I think that, you could probably make a pretty good case that stuff like their VR headsets are not quite as big of a boondoggle as the Vision Pro is, but it's not that. The idea that a storefront would create a new piece of technology that would then kind of push people to create things that they can then make their 30% fee off of makes a lot of sense. It just didn't work out that way. And I think that the real miss here is that that's what the Steam machine could have been as well. The Steam machine becomes like a new entry point to get people into Steam. And this is kind of why, what I mean by their goals are probably not quite the same as Microsoft, because Microsoft wants to sell devices. They want to get the attach rate. They want to get that digital buy-in. The same is for PlayStation. They want to make as much money off of that console as they can now. You can tell because the price only goes up. It does not go down. And they want to sell their prestige games. Their economics are built in a way where, they probably expect a certain amount of people to interact with that storefront, primarily buying their prestige video games and, making that add-on purchase at the end. But Steam doesn't have to do that. Steam just needs you to participate in the commerce of the store. And to me, I'm sure that with the amount of time they've had the deck and the amount of time they have had Steam, there is data saying that, a Steam user on average will spend this much money on this stuff. And I assume that those numbers just did not go up in the way that they wanted to with the deck. So the idea of, even upfront subsidizing a little bit of the Steam machine to get people in the door at $500 or $750 and then make it up on the back end, is number one. Like, maybe those lines just didn't cross in the way they wanted to. I think the other part of this that really just kind of bothers me, though, is the same as the GTA thing. It's the same as all of the console prices going up. It is this kind of like bullish approval and like ridiculous thinking that is true, unfortunately, but people will pay it. And I think that is kind of what this all comes down to, is that, corporations are not your friend. Valve also not your friend. But the idea that, the $1,000 and $1,050, a really weird number. The fact that they're not even playing the like dumb pricing game of pricing it at $9.99 and taking the $51 hit on that one to get you in the door with a Steam box is, I think, telling. They're not trying to sell this thing in that kind of way. It is very much just, you're going to pay this. You're going to pay the money for this thing. You're going to buy this thing if you want it. And there is kind of this acceptance that the people who are going to buy the Steam machine, we kind of already know who they are. This is not going to be a big thing to get new Steam users. It's not going to be a big thing to like rapidly increase the amount of money Steam users are spending, because remember, it is $1,050. So it is more expensive. There's not as much money in the budget to spend on video games because of how expensive this thing is. And it kind of has this kind of tumbling snowball effect that you continue to spend more money on these devices. You have less money to spend on the things to play on the devices. And the acceptance that people will continue to only play 1 or 2 games a year. And this has like the larger ramifications that I think are a little bit more dangerous, I guess, for gaming in general, is that, by making everything more expensive, by reducing the amount of money people are buying or even like browsing for software, you're now redoing the whole, well, I have 1 or 2 games that I play a year, so I will not be playing other games. I'm not buying additional software. I'm not encouraging new developers to try new ideas. I'm simply buying the same games, playing the same games over and over again. And then GTA comes out, and I'm going to play that one until the next one comes out. And there's this part of the consumer base that is the majority, it seems, that is, doing that is participating in gaming in that kind of way. And those people are the people who pay the big bucks to make the things happen. They pay for the $200 or $200 million video games. They pay for the $1,050 Steam machines. And then even less of the money as the industry, like the bottom of the consumer base kind of drops out as they become priced out. Fewer people are paying for smaller games, which means there are fewer people buying smaller games, paying for newer ideas or different ideas or unique ideas. And so we kind of have this like great homogenization of what gaming is. And I think that's a bummer. I think that like really when we get down to money and when we get down to pricing, like that is the frustration I have, is not that, I really don't care if Rockstar deserves $80 for GTA 6 or not, or, is Mario Kart worth $80? It doesn't really matter to me. The thing that I think about more is the long tail on those things and how increasing the price of games instead of decreasing the cost of them ultimately means that people are buying less games. And I think that is a net negative for the gaming industry at large. So the money episode. I gotta run in. I gotta go to work. Gotta do my job. So stew on that a little bit. Like think about that next time you're looking at the prices of these games, or waiting for a Steam sale to hit. There is a reason that games are expensive, and unfortunately, market fluctuations and shareholders demand that you pay it because you will, and I think that sucks. All right, we'll see ya. Have a good rest of your Wednesday. Sorry for the bummer, but here we are. See ya.